I'm Yuval Yaret from Agile Sparks. I'm going to talk today about effective and energized on-time delivery in flow and Kanban environments, and specifically about how can we commit and deliver on time, even when we're talking about a pull mode, which doesn't seem to be um, aligned with commitment and predictability. And on top of that, the second half of the talk is what are the emerging properties of energized flow and Kanban systems. Um, there are a lot of talks about Kanban leading to lack of energy. How do we deal with um, the lack of time boxes, which are supposed to be energizing the system? And we'll talk about some things that can happen and some practices and ideas how to deal with them. So let's start. Um, the first issue is meeting commitments in a flow environment. So does flow mean no commitment? There's certainly um, some thinking and some opinions of people, especially coming from uh, waterfall as well as Scrum worlds. Let's say all this flow and pull and just uh, keep taking the next cards. How can you commit to anything? How can you give any predictability to the business with this kind of mode? So if we look at the kind of work that we have in our portfolio, there are different kinds of activities here. Some activities require some sort of soft commitment, like roadmap work or replacing some architecture. We do want to make progress on that. We do want to know more or less when it's gonna finish and know that we're making progress, but we don't have a specific deadline we need to deliver on. The other kind is hard commitments. Hard commitments are activities where there's money at the end of the line, a paying customer that requested a specific feature and paid for it. Or if we have a portfolio of products, maybe another product is waiting for a delivery from us in order to do something on their own. Maybe they don't work with pull mode, so they still need those dates. Other things can be a conference or a demo to a specific client, or setting up a partnership, regulation. There are different kinds of reasons to make hard commitments. But the point is, not everything should be hard commitment, and you should manage your portfolio to balance between the hard and the soft. And we'll dive deeper into that later on. So what does Kanban have to say about commitments and predictability? So basically, if we do have something we need to deliver on a fixed date, we can mark that on our Kanban board. We can have cards that show a specific due date. We can have classes of service which um, identify cards as specific cards that need to be delivered on a specific due date. And in some boards we also have visibility to where we are in relation to the date. For example, here we have the gray things that are some due dates well into the future. Yellow are things that are coming up in the next week, and red is something that's already the date has gone by already. So we really need to pay attention to that card specifically. So how do we know what is the date that we can commit to? Basically, if we track all of the finish dates or finish cycle times of all the cards in the past, we can see here the different kinds of cards, and each of them with its own cycle time. So what we can see here, for example, is that engineering investments have a certain cycle time and a certain worst case or variability to their cycle time. We can see that MMFs, you know, the green triangles, have their own cycle time and variability. And if someone comes and tells us we need a commitment on an MMF, we can tell them, yeah, basically the average for the MMFs here in this system is around 30, and if we need to make a 95% commitment, it's about 55 days. That's where we are. But the first question we need to ask is, uh, do we know why we're making this commitment to this date? Um, we certainly want to nail down what kind of commitment exactly uh, requires the use of a fixed date. And we want to do that because we want to limit the amount of fixed date work we have in our system. Because if we look, for example, at our calendar as an example, here we have a calendar where all of the work is fixed date, whether it's specific client work or things you do at home, public training. The calendar is basically full. No place to add anything. And if there's any need, any surprises here, the person using this calendar will not be able um, to do anything. You will, if there's, I don't know, an opportunity to meet a great thought leader coming into town, he won't have time to meet him unless he cancels some work. And if there's another client which wants a fast meeting, he won't have any slack. So what we want to do, this looks a little bit better. We have some gray areas here, which are things which are not fixed dates. You don't have to do the back office work on the slides specifically at this date. Although if you kill or overrun all of those gray ones in the month preceding the conference, you will be in some sort of problem. So you do need to monitor how much of the gray ones you manage to do and your progress on them. But this way you do have some slack in the system in case, for example, the client meetings run long or another urgent meeting comes up, another expedite, if you use the Kanban terms, comes up. So basically, like the calendar, you want to make sure that your portfolio, your cards on your Kanban board have a similar mix of colors. Some colors which are fixed dates, some cards which are normal. Because the non-fixed date work is slack, it buffers for variability. And without it, you should take more safety time buffers. So if you do have non-fixed work, you should, if you do have all of your work is fixed date, if someone asks how long will it take you to finish a card, you should say instead of the average 10 days, you should probably say about 13 or 14, just because there's no slack to deal with variability you have there. So what if one of those fixed date features is running late? Basically, if you had those slack moments, you can pull some capacity from other projects or features where there's slack, or if you're working within the same system, you can. So the next thing is, let's move from the space of single cards, discrete cards, to bigger projects. So in this case, we have a big project with a lot of work. That's not a specific card. We cannot use the cycle time charts we saw earlier to predict and track our progress. So we need to do some more elaborate work around it. So we start by size estimating the work. How we do that? How do we do that? Let's review what estimation means in the world of Kanban. So basically, estimating, like Carl Scotland says, is an economic decision. I mean, we need to do a trade-off because between how much it costs us and the value of information that we buy. So, so in the world of Kanban, there are a couple of different estimation levels we can use. We can just count the features that we have within this project, don't really estimate them. We can estimate them in t-shirt sizes. We can estimate them in story points or in ideal man days. And at this level, we'll probably skip tasks altogether. So exactly what estimations in our estimation approach we use depends on the scenario we're in. So if we're in an e-commerce platform, B2B, we might have some partnerships we need to take care of, so there might be some fixed date features from time to time, but most of the work can probably be roadmap based and not tied to fixed deadlines. If we're an enterprise component released yearly within a portfolio, we probably have some dependencies and some commitments to other players in the portfolio unless the whole portfolio is using pool mode. The same more or less goes for a new platform in legacy mode. And if we have fixed price deliveries in a banking project, we probably need to do some real estimates because there is a real price for missing because we get paid based on the amount of work that we estimated. So if you look at, you can see a couple of different work types here, and let's see how they map um, to to the connection between the estimation effort and the accuracy we need. So like Carl Scotland says, estimating is an economic decision, and we need to understand how much we're willing to pay and what is the value that we'll get for the information we buy here. And there's a diminishing returns function here. So basically for production defects and IT support cases or regulatory requirements, the estimation will not really affect the decision of whether we're going to do the work or not. So we don't want to spend too much effort on it. If there's an important dev environment improvement, then the estimation doesn't really matter. And if it's not an important improvement, we'll probably not pull it into work at this point in time. So for roadmap and technical rewrites, we do want to have some estimate about the cost it might affect decisions of ROI. And if we get into the realm of fixed date features, fixed date projects, and fixed price features, then it's worthwhile to do a little more estimates and achieve some more accuracy, especially if we're in an aggressive environment. If we have competition and we want to underbid our competitors, we want to make sure that we can underbid um, and still earn money and not lose money here. So that's the important aspect and why we might want to pay some more upfront here. So we started with the size estimates, and now we have some baseline to start the project with. Let's assume we have our historical throughput right here in the lower right, and if we zoom there, we will see that it's about um, between 20 and 30 cards um, per day, for example. Um, and what we can say because of that is that there is some best case scenario, which means that the top of the green line will be our throughput, and there's a worst case scenario, which means that the red line will be our throughput. And if we want to make a safe estimate to when this project will be finished or how much scope we can do by a given deadline, we can use the red line. And then we have a scope buffer on top of that. So the yellow and green areas here are buffers that we can use while we're actually executing the project. So if we look at what happens during execution, if our completion, the amount of cards we completed, is here in the green area, then it means we're okay. We are on cruise control for this project. No need to worry. Uh, we are on track to meeting some of our stretch goals. If we're in the yellow area, it means um, we need to watch, understand what's going on, be prepared to take some action because we're using some serious amounts of our scope buffer. And if we're in the red, it means we need to act now because we're not going to make it to the minimal scope for the due date. And one option is to use the scope buffer, as I mentioned. Another option is to use the time buffer. So have some time after the calculated due date where we can see the red line trend continuing. If we continue on the red trend, the time we will finish the project will be a few weeks or months into the future. So if we don't have any stretch scope and all of the scope is mandatory, then our only option is to use a time buffer, not a scope buffer. That's classic agile release management, release planning. Nothing new there. So basically, if you look at the portfolio of projects or the portfolio of things that we're working on, the non-fixed date projects can be the safety buffers that we use to protect our fixed date projects. That requires some flexibility, which means that our people, our resources can switch between different cards. If we are talking about teams here, each team working on a project, we need to be able to have versatile teams that can swarm, and we need to have the information on hand to know when to do what. So here we have a specific case where it's even more complex than that, where we have a non-agile client. We have features we need to sign off on very early. So before we go to develop them, we need a sign off from the client. So we see that there's a big work in progress here of customer requirements that have been signed off, and the development is running. Um, um, there's a big gap between the development. So we can see here that we're tracking the completion of the development work. We have some visibility to the amount of signed off work. So it's basically the same approach as before, with the added complexity of the interaction with the client. And you might want to check up on those additional resources for estimation later on. You can have the Prezi. It's already online, so you don't have to write it down right now. So let's talk about energies. Why is this even an issue? Well, pull can have some undesirable effects on the system. It's not trivial. And one of them is elasticity. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. That's Parkinson's law, which affects all knowledge work. And in product development, we also, as Reinhard said, we must also control the expansion of work. Some work can behave like So basically we got rid of the completion time with Kanban and pull mode. And what happens when there isn't a completion time? One thing that can happen is that if we have fluffy definitions, we won't drive to have clear definitions because we have all the time in the world. Another thing that can happen is we can overdo things because again there's no time limit that's bounding us. And let's assume we somehow provided this focus and clarity as to what we need to do. We still have a problem. We're supposed to adopt a roadrunner or relay race approach where we finish the tasks as quickly as possible. Then we look for other tasks to perform, trying to keep the local lead times fast. And when do we stop running? One example is the lowest common denominator. For example, since we have a bottleneck, the lowest common denominator, or as Reinertsen again calls it, the hurry up and wait principle. Large queues make it hard to create urgency, and if you look at what happens in front of a bottleneck, you can see that people that are in front of the bottleneck, seeing the queues in front of them, will not have a sense of urgency to keep up their fast times. So let's look at a couple of cases where I've seen it work reasonably well. So one example is Scrum teams that have a healthy cadence. Seems to work well when they move to Kanban. If they keep their cadence, it helps them keep their energies. Another example, if there's an unnegotiable release date, a clear business goal, it usually provides the good energies, especially if it's a small project. If it's a big project, you might have lack of visibility to where you are compared to that goal, and we'll see that problem later on. And if you have a very good relationship with the people feeding you with the work, if the work is very clear in very small batches, small cards, there's usually good energy in the system. And if you have an SLA for all of the cards, usually there isn't a problem of energy unless the SLA is unrealistic, so it doesn't mean anything anymore. So how do we know what is the energy level that we currently have? We start by seeing, we use visualization, seeing the system. So one important thing is to go to the Gemba. We will look at many different reports or patterns for visibility. One of the important things is to walk around and see them, see the people, sense their energies, get a feel for what's going on. So if you look at the Kanban board is quite a stateless snapshot kind of view. They don't show movement. If you look at the picture here as well, you don't see the movement. You can sense when there is faster movement and when there is slow movement because you know the patterns of water, and you probably guessed right where there is faster movement of the water and when there is slower. We need to create these kinds of patterns for Kanban. So the first thing we want to have is some baseline, some sense of the overall movement in the system. We look at the throughput, or we also, it's what typically in Agile is called velocity, the average cycle times. We get a feel for the overall movement in the system. Then we want to see work that is blocked, that is the easiest energy problem to sense, pull flow problem to sense. So we mark blocked work, and usually we add the reason why it's blocked and use a very high contrast color to signify that. And then we want to see work that is struggling, not really blocked. So the basic thing here, if you see a sample card from the Get Kanban board we use to teach Kanban, you can see the amount of work you have in each station and how much of that work is finished. So you get a sense for how much work is left in the station, and if you remember what happened in the last couple of days in the daily, you can sense whether it should have finished or not already and whether it's in trouble or not. Some more advanced visualization is to have a Crowley for the cards. So ask people to explicitly say when their cards, they feel they are struggling, to have a signal for the entire team that a card is struggling and they need to discuss as a team what to do with it, offer some help, things like that. Another option is to mark cards which are in lane for too many days. Here we see that requirement cards should flow within 5 days. So if a card is in the lane for more than 5 days, it will show an exclamation mark, show it's a problem. Another option is to have this zombie cards approach, where each card can have an indication how old it is, and the system can be used to for each of the features track where it should be. So each day move a feature that is in progress one lane to the right, and then you can easily see features that have been in progress for way too long. If you do have some history of features that have been running long, you can analyze what's going on there and look at what were the lanes that they occupied for most of the time that they were in progress, and you can learn something from that and try to improve. And basically, if you look here, it's very hard to see that there is a card with a problem. If we look here, we can easily see that T3 is having a problem. So the idea here is that flags provide you some movement information even on a snapshot, similar to what you saw in the picture of the of the river flowing, um, you see some sort of watercolors as showing lack of movement, and here we need to do something specific on the Kanban board to show that. Another way to do it is to um, show the cards that have been in the system for too long, that should have been finished according to the average cycle times, and give the team a chance to focus on them. And why is it so important to see the problem, to see the struggling work? It can help you focus on the late tasks and counteract what Reinertsen calls the amplification principle, the principle that the more a task is late, the more you will neglect it, um, the more you will procrastinate or move to stuff that isn't already late. Another reason is to encourage whole team attention. So not have each person to his problems, but try to pull in the capabilities or the capacity of the whole team to bring the cycle times down. So if you have this visibility, the next thing you need to do is to set up the explicit policies that aim to bring the struggling work in. Whether it's to Uber slice work once it's in struggling mode, whether it's to go into more heavily pairing on work that's struggling, involving the expert once you see there's a need for that, to have a forum to decide whether we stop or continue. That's also thinking like a VC, trying to stop throwing good money after bad. And quantum thinking. Think about time boxes as things that when the time box is finished, you stop and think what to do. Not necessarily stop the work, but stop and finish to make sure that it's a good idea to continue. You can think about the daily meetings actually as quantums for the work. So now that we have the visibility to what's happening, let's talk about some uh, ways to improve the cadence. So one of the things we can do to help energize the system is time boxing. So a time box can be used to drive to production, to have potentially shippable product, to show a demo, and each of them is better than the other and better than nothing. Now, an anecdote about demo is sometimes even demo create too much energy and synchronization. You can see teams that before the demo there is a spike in check-ins to the source control system, and all of the stories get finished just in time for the demo, not necessarily in great quality. So you need to be very careful about what a demo does for you, and maybe play with the cadence of the demos. So for example, if a 2 week cadence is what you use, maybe try 1 week demos to break this synchronization, because it's too short for work to synchronize to it. It's a better solution than having a 3 week, for example, synchronization, just to um, help the work be easier, which will be something that a lot of teams will ask for. Now, if you want to look deeper into the combination of cadence, Scrum, and Kanban, a good place to start is Scrumban. And because timeboxes be dangerous, you should experiment with the use of timehooks as an opportunities to reevaluate where you are, like a quantum, not necessarily cutoff points for the work, just to see where you are, give feedback, review, and decide what to do. So the next thing you want to really invest in is the clarity of work. I've seen many cases where investing in better definitions and specifications of the work results in better energies and completions. So one area to look at is behavior driven or specification by example. Um, the idea is how to drive the work from specification scenarios, the behavior. Um, so why do we want granular work? It allows us to focus on the key issues and rather than unimportant ones. It's more clear. There's layers, variability, and complexity of integration if we work on small parts and integrate each one of them one at a time. There's better testability. There's better risk mitigation. There are a whole lot of reasons why going to more granular work makes sense. So there are a couple of ways to drive more granular work in our world, whether it's user stories, behavior, or acceptance testing, development, specification by example, taking ideas from Lean Startup, the MVP, minimally viable product, or MMFs, minimally marketable features. All of them are, there are um, some systems here or frameworks here which are similar to each other. Um, the next thing is we want to be able to bring the work to the right level of done that we meant. And a lot of times we are overdoing it because we don't have um, clear definition of the level of done. So we add bells and whistles, we do refactoring without any um, uh, refactoring to that. We do unnecessary tests, all because we don't have any completion time. And if we see it, what a specific dev manager has told me, he felt that testing used to be something that uh, filled whatever space was left. So there was a cap because there was always a deadline. And with flow mode, it seems to be a problem that um, there is no cap on how long testing takes. Another example I'm seeing in another client is that when a tester is assigned to the team, fully assigned to a feature team, um, there's no global optimization of how much testing you do on a feature. He completes the testing to 100% when before there was some um, central view of which features to take some more risk on and do some less testing. So that's something that's missing when you don't have any completion dates. So what you need to realize is that not all work requires the same treatment, and you should have some discussions to clarify the treatment for each work item. And one important presentation to It's Efficient Design by Joshua Karyevsky. We talks about sliders, and it's really a great presentation. Gives you a lot of ideas how to achieve this. So another aspect is looking at the whole system and doing some optimization on that. So first, if we look at what a pull system with limited whip does, the first thing it does, it pulls in the fast stations and to adjust to the rate of the bottleneck. So we see here at the tactical level that devs need to stop, cannot start new work, and they should help with the current work. The effect of that is the devs slow down, sometimes even stop and adjust their rate. The next thing you want to do is you want to improve the throughput of the bottleneck. So you want to use the development slack capacity to do that. So developers need to ask what can we do to help testers be more effective. So some examples can be to improve the definition of done, delivered, the work delivered by development, or drive from testing to reduce the amount of rework and failure demand created by new information that's discovered when delivering to testing. Get that information earlier and understand some specific work that you want to do in order to improve the testing capacity, and you can use the slack on the development to use that, pull it when there is a full test queue, and drive that work, and it can bypass testing as there is no testing needed to finish this work. So it's great work to do when there's a test bottleneck. And the cool thing about it is that this is work that can be energized even though there is a current bottleneck, and it makes sense for the people. It connects to their purpose of improving the throughput, so it both reduces frustration from doing someone else's work, as well as helps you improve the system and reduce the effect of the bottleneck next time it happens. And that is part of the 5 focusing steps cycle that is core to the theory of constraints by Goldratt. Identifying the bottleneck, exploiting it, then subordinating the system to improve the capacity of the bottleneck. Then at some point you might want to elevate by shifting people or resources or adding more resources, and then keep on the lookout for the next bottleneck. That's one of the 5 core Kanban properties or principles to improve using models. This is one of the key models that is used in Kanban. So another cool thing is intelligent routing. So if you're trying to drive between 2 points, there's probably the shortest path, and maybe that's what you want to take when there isn't any traffic, but there are some other routes that you might want to use. And Reinert's principle of alternate rides is to develop and maintain alternate routes around the points of congestion. So this leads to tailored routing. Who says all the work in our system needs to take the same route? We can change the routes in case it makes sense. So for example, if testing is congested, we can do the demo to product first to make sure that testing are getting the right feature. This will reduce the iterations for testing. When product is far away, we should probably start testing before the demo to provide just the routing based on the availability of resources. We can also use different routes like this on different kinds of work. And there might be some work where there are more chances that the demo will provide key feedback in other types. The testing is will provide some more feedback. Another thing is classes of treatment, so you might want to get better results by tagging the work according to the level of involvement by specialists, and take the network congestion into account when you pull work, prefer work that can route around the congestion. So don't take work that requires heavy security specialist involvement when you see that um, there are large queues before each station. So these are a couple of examples, just examples of how looking at the whole system, at the routing and the interactions between the stations can both improve the results as well as um, let station um, run fastest and most effectively, even though some other areas might be more congested, um, as well as um, divert the slack you have in those places to improve the system towards tomorrow. So we saw a couple of, we talked about meeting commitments in a flow environment, then why there's even the issue of energies and energizing a flow system, how to see the level of energies, a couple of ways to improve the energies, cadence, clarity of work, the whole system. And basically what you need to do in your environment is to see where things are and then decide what you are doing in order to maintain the right level of energies. If you see that there are good energies, you might not want to change anything, but if you see a gap, you might want to invest in clarity of purpose, in some cadence aspects, in reducing the size of work items, a couple of different areas, and experiment, see what works best in your environment. Some parting words of caution. So beware of energizing your system too much and reaching unsustainable pace. A good idea is from time to time stopping and doing some innovation, maybe a FedEx day of people working on their own ideas, not just on the cards, on the board. Don't eliminate good variability by trying to bring all the work in within the expected cycle times. You need to go read Reinhardt really sure that the measures that you take don't kill off more variability than you want it to. There's some good variability in the system, some good ideas that will take more time, but will be worth it economically at the end. Don't assume the worst. Don't assume that if you go into a pull mode, all energies will be gone. Um, you need to apply energizing countermeasures in case low energies are apparent, but not necessarily up front. And really, sometimes the side trip people take is worth more than finishing the work. You need to be aware of some good ideas and things that you might reach on the side. See the whole picture. We've seen a lot of tools and policies that might help you, but remember that it's really all about the people. And don't think that you will have a system that you can install and forget about. Kanban is really about being in a permanent state of improving, reinventing, and experimenting. So, how do you start tomorrow morning? You visualize. My recommendation is to visualize the work. Don't need to go into those fancy visualizations of late work or struggling work that we saw. Invest in great granular stories, working from behavior or acceptance tests or specification by example seems to be a great way to start. Introduce a basic cadence like demos every 2 weeks. Have a simple definition of how you work, explicit policies, so people are aware of the expectations and what you will do and how you will deal with late work. And do some thinking, not too much about, but be prepared to know what to do when you find that bottleneck that's hiding in your system if you don't already know where it is. And mainly keep your eyes open. Go see how things look, learn, experiment, adapt the system, take some ideas from what I showed, some other ideas from out there, and enjoy evolving your